The Nevada desert baked under a ruthless afternoon sun, turning the air above the sand into a wavering mirage. A row of elite U.S. Army snipers stood beside their rifles, each weapon gleaming like a forged promise of precision. The distant target's steel silhouettes barely visible at over a mile waited in silence. Dust swirled with every passing gust, carrying the faint smell of gunpowder and sweat. General Marcus Hall stepped out of the command tent with the confidence of a man who believed he'd seen everything. Broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and proud, Hall was known across the base as the kind of commander who didn't believe in weakness or in luck. He prided himself on discipline, tradition, and results. To him, the firing range was a place for warriors, not paperwork officers. "All right, let's see what you've got," Hall barked, his voice echoing across the range. A line of soldiers straightened, rifles in hand. The first few snipers took their turns, shots ringing out like thunderclaps. Targets clanged in the distance, though most rounds hit off-center. Hall nodded approvingly, his face unreadable. He didn't smile often, and when he did, it was usually at someone else's expense. Then came a voice behind him, soft but steady. "Mind if I give it a try, sir?" Hall turned. Standing a few feet away was Colonel Sarah Reed, her uniform crisp despite the desert heat, her hair tied neatly beneath her cap. She didn't look like the others. No sniper's gloves, no spotting scope, no telltale soot marks from 1,000 rounds. Just calm eyes and quiet confidence. Hall squinted. "Colonel Reed, is it? You're not on the list for today's range session." "I'm aware, sir," she said, her tone respectful but firm. "Just thought I'd see how the rifle handles." The general chuckled, the kind of laugh that drew smirks from the younger soldiers nearby. "You sure you can handle it, Colonel? That's a Barrett .50 caliber. She kicks harder than most people expect." "I'll manage," Sarah replied, her voice almost amused. Hall turned to his men. "Gentlemen, looks like we've got ourselves some entertainment today." The laughter spread like wildfire, rolling through the ranks. Some whispered jokes. Others exchanged knowing looks, the kind men shared when they thought they already knew the outcome. To them, she was a desk officer, maybe an analyst, definitely not someone who belonged behind a sniper rifle. Sarah ignored them. She stepped forward, kneeling beside the weapon. Her movements were unhurried, but exact, checking the scope, adjusting the bipod, aligning the sights. Every motion was efficient, practiced. Her gloved hand brushed over the rifle's cold metal like an old friend. Hall crossed his arms. Target set at 2 miles. No wind flags out there today, makes it tricky. Even my top snipers need a spotter for this one. "I won't need one," she said softly. He raised an eyebrow. "No spotter? No rangefinder?" Sarah looked down the scope, her right eye narrowing. "I don't rely on equipment for everything, sir. The terrain talks if you listen." The general blinked, uncertain whether she was serious or simply trying to sound poetic. "All right then," he said finally, a grin tugging at his mouth. 2 miles. You hit it. I'll personally buy you dinner in Vegas. You miss well. I'll expect that rifle cleaned spotless by morning." The soldiers chuckled again. The bet was made. But Sarah didn't respond. Her focus had already narrowed to the world within her scope, the shimmering desert, the faint metallic glint of the far-off target, the subtle shift of the mirage that betrayed the wind's movement. She adjusted the elevation dial slightly, then paused to feel the breeze against her cheek. It wasn't strong, but it danced unpredictably in waves. She calculated silently. Air density, humidity, barrel temperature, the Coriolis effect. Every variable became part of the equation in her mind. She exhaled slowly, remembering another desert long ago, Afghanistan, years earlier when she'd crouched behind a similar rifle, dust burning her throat, her spotter's voice in her ear. Back then, She wasn't a colonel or a curiosity. She was Ghost 2, part of a covert sniper unit whose missions never made it to the news. The kind of missions where one shot decided whether her team lived or died. Back then, she'd made impossible shots. But she'd also lost something that day: her partner, the only person who ever called her Reed, with a grin and said she made silence sound brave. That loss haunted her still, a whisper every time she looked down a scope. Now, years later, under the hot Nevada sun, she could almost hear his voice again. Wind from the right, quarter value. "You've got this, Reed." Sarah steadied her breathing. Around her, the laughter faded. The snickers dimmed to silence as she adjusted her position with mechanical grace. Her left hand rested gently on the barrel, her right index finger hovering over the trigger. She inhaled. The desert air felt heavy, expectant. "Whenever you're ready," Hall said, trying to sound casual but feeling a strange tension in his chest. Something about the way she moved didn't match his expectations. This wasn't the fumbling curiosity of an officer out of her depth. This was precision. Sarah didn't respond. She waited. The wind shifted slightly to the north. She made one final adjustment to the scope, barely perceptible to the watching eyes. Then she exhaled, the sound so faint it was almost a whisper. And then the rifle roared. The explosion of sound shook the air, kicking up a cloud of dust. The recoil drove the weapon back hard, but Sarah absorbed it effortlessly, the rifle steady against her shoulder. The shot echoed across the desert, vanishing into the distance. Every soldier's gaze snapped toward the far horizon, where the faint metal silhouette stood waiting. 1 second, 2, 3, nothing. Then clang. A sharp metallic ring cut through the silence, echoing like thunder across the barren flats. The steel plate wobbled, struck dead center. The range fell utterly still. Even the desert wind seemed to pause. Hall's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Every soldier stood frozen, staring at the target through their scopes or binoculars, trying to process what had just happened. 2 miles. First shot. Perfect hit. Sarah slowly rose, brushing the dust from her knees. She cleared the chamber, laid the rifle back on the table, and turned to the stunned general. Her expression was unreadable, neither smug nor surprised. "Target neutralized, sir," she said simply. Hall blinked, still staring at her. "You how?" He stopped himself, shaking his head. The laughter that once filled the range had turned to silence. Even the youngest recruits looked at her differently now, not as an officer playing soldier, but as someone who had just done the impossible. Sarah gave a small nod, turned, and began walking toward the tents. Behind her, the general finally spoke, his voice low and uncertain. "Colonel Reed, where exactly did you learn to shoot like that?" She didn't turn around. "A long way from here, sir," she said, in a place where missing wasn't an option. As her silhouette faded into the heat, the soldiers still stared at the distant plate, its center marked with a perfect hole. The desert that had mocked her now echoed her quiet triumph. General Hall stood motionless, the sun blazing overhead, his pride shrinking beneath the weight of that echoing clang. For the first time in years, he felt something unexpected: respect and curiosity. He had no idea who Colonel Sarah Reed really was. But by the end of the week, he would. The hum of the desert wind still echoed in General Hall's mind hours after the range went quiet. That single shot had disturbed something in him, an unease that no amount of command authority could calm. Colonel Sarah Reed had walked away without fanfare, but the echo of that clang lingered in every corner of the base. That night, as the camp's floodlights cast long shadows across the sand, Hall sat in his quarters staring at her file. He'd requested it immediately after the range exercise, driven by curiosity. But when the thick brown folder landed on his desk, he frowned. Most of the pages were blacked-out whole paragraphs hidden under thick blocks of ink, classified, redacted, restricted. Only fragments remained. Name: Reed Sarah Elaine. Rank: Colonel. Assignments: multiple deployments: Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia. Commendations: redacted. Unit: redacted. Operations: redacted. At the bottom of one page, a single handwritten note stood out. See reference file, Ghost Team 6. Hall leaned back in his chair. Ghost Team 6. He'd heard that name whispered once or twice, but always in the kind of conversations that stopped when someone senior walked by. Black operations. Off-the-books missions. Men and women who technically didn't exist. The kind of unit that left no fingerprints, just results. He closed the folder and rubbed his eyes. "Who the hell are you, Colonel?" he muttered. Half a world away and years earlier, Sarah Reed crouched on a crumbling rooftop in the outskirts of Kandahar. The air was thick with heat and dust, her throat dry beneath the thin scarf that barely filtered the grit. Beside her, her spotter sergeant Nick Torres peered through the spotting scope, murmuring numbers like a heartbeat. "Winds quartering from the south," Nick said quietly. 7.2 mils right. Target at 1,400 meters, moving east. Sarah adjusted her rifle slightly, her movements smooth and methodical. "Copy that," she whispered. Below them, a convoy of insurgents moved through the village's edge, unaware that two shadows watched from above. Sarah exhaled. "On my mark." Nick nodded, his breathing steady. "You've got this, Reed." Crack. The first target dropped before his comrades even heard the sound. Chaos erupted below, but Sarah didn't flinch. She reloaded, shifted, and fired again, each shot timed between heartbeats. Within 90 seconds, the ambush had ended before it began. Nick whistled softly. "That's 6 clean hits. You're starting to make me look bad." She smiled faintly behind her scarf. "You make yourself look bad, Torres." Their laughter was quiet, but it eased the tension. For a few brief moments, the war felt distant. They were part of Operation Iron Veil, a mission so secret it didn't officially exist. Ghost Team 6, an elite mix of snipers, recon specialists, and covert operators, was sent deep into enemy territory to disrupt arms trafficking lines. No backup, no extraction guarantee. Sarah had earned her place the hard way. She wasn't just precise, she was patient. Her superior said she could wait motionless for 48 hours without breaking focus. Her kills weren't about numbers. They were about necessity. Every pull of the trigger carried weight. But not every shot was clean. One night, they were pinned down in a ravine after an intel leak exposed their location. Mortar thundered around them, lighting up the darkness like lightning strikes. Sarah and Nick scrambled for higher ground, bullets whipping past their ears. "Go left." Nick shouted. "I'll cover." "No." She yelled, but it was too late. He broke cover, laying down suppressive fire as she climbed toward a vantage point. She turned, lined up her scope, and saw the flash of a muzzle aimed at him. She fired a split second too late. The bullet struck true, but so did the enemies. Nick fell before the echo faded. Sarah didn't remember screaming, but the others said they heard it across the canyon. She stayed beside his body until extraction hours later, staring at his lifeless face beneath the pale dawn. The mission was labeled a success. The official report said 6 hostiles eliminated. It didn't mention the 7th casualty, the only one that mattered to her. After that, she stopped talking in the field. Her silence earned her a new call sign, the Whisper Widow. Months later, when the team was finally rotated back to base, Sarah was summoned to a secure briefing room. A general she didn't recognize greeted her with a polite but cold tone. "Colonel Reed," he said, sliding a document across the table. "You're being reassigned stateside." She frowned. "Sir, Ghost 6 isn't finished." He shook his head. "The unit's being dissolved. Your record will reflect standard deployment service only." Her jaw tightened. "That's not right." The general leaned forward. "This conversation never happened. Dismissed." And just like that, years of unseen sacrifice were erased with a signature. Her medals were filed under someone else's name. Her missions vanished into archives labeled top secret. To the public, Sarah Reed became just another staff officer, quietly reassigned to training command. But the battlefield never left her. Now, back in Nevada, she lay awake in her quarters, listening to the wind outside. The memory of Nick's voice echoed faintly in her mind, the dry humor, the steady calm before every mission. She could almost hear him saying, "You ever miss Reed?" "Nah, didn't think so." She smiled faintly into the dark. "You'd have laughed at that shot today, Nick," she whispered. 2 miles. Dead center. The base was quiet, save for the distant hum of generators. But peace never sat easily with her. Even in safety, she felt the ghosts' faces, voices, the weight of all those unseen moments. Every perfect shot came at a cost, and those costs didn't fade when the gunfire stopped. For her, silence wasn't peace. It was memory. Meanwhile, General Hall still sat in his office, staring at the half-redacted file. He poured himself a coffee that had long gone cold. Every instinct told him this woman's story ran deeper than any official record could show. He picked up the phone and called Intelligence Command. "I need clarification on a classified reference," he said carefully. "Something called Ghost Team 6. A voice on the other end went quiet. "Sir, that's restricted beyond your clearance." "Then elevate it," he snapped. "I just saw something out there today that defies explanation." A pause. Then quietly, "Sir, if Colonel Reed is involved, I suggest you stop asking questions." The line went dead. Hall leaned back, heart thudding. For the first time in years, he felt a hint of something unfamiliar humility. He'd mocked her that morning, thinking she was just another officer. Now he realized he'd stood beside a legend that didn't exist on paper. He looked at the range report, still sitting on his desk. Under the remarks section, one of the instructors had written, "Colonel Reed hit the 2-mile target on first attempt. Perfect center mass." Hall smiled faintly. "Ghost Team 6, he murmured. "Guess the ghosts aren't all gone." Outside, the desert night stretched endless and quiet, hiding its secrets beneath layers of sand. But somewhere out there, the echo of that perfect shot still floated through the dry air, a sound that carried both triumph and loss. And in her barracks, Sarah lay awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted but calm. The rifle might have been locked away, but in her mind, the crosshairs never really faded. For her, war wasn't over. It had simply changed shape. Morning sunlight spilled across the Nevada desert, washing the sniper range in gold. The air shimmered, and the faint scent of oil and gunmetal lingered. It was supposed to be a routine training day, but rumors already buzzed through the base like electricity. "Did you hear? The colonel nailed a 2-mile shot yesterday." "No way. Nobody hits that clean on their first try. Ask the general, he was there." General Hall heard every whisper as he walked across the sand toward the range. Normally, gossip irritated him, but today was different. Beneath his polished exterior, curiosity pulsed like an itch he couldn't scratch. He'd read the fragments of Sarah Reed's file, heard the silence from command, and seen her precision firsthand. But one thing still gnawed at him. Why hide a talent like that? Hall spotted Sarah at the far end of the range, kneeling beside a table of rifles. She wasn't shooting, just cleaning one. Her movements were steady, methodical. Every motion felt deliberate, controlled. "Colonel Reed," Hall called out, his tone sharp but not unkind. She looked up, offering a polite nod. "Morning, sir. I suppose you've heard the rumors," he said, stopping beside her. "Half the base thinks you're some kind of magician." Sarah smiled faintly. "Soldiers love stories, sir. They make the desert less quiet." Hall studied her. "I don't like stories," he said. "I like proof." She set down the cleaning rod and met his gaze. "You already have proof, sir." Hall crossed his arms, refusing to let her quiet confidence unsettle him. "One shot could be luck." "Luck?" she repeated softly. "At 2 miles?" He didn't answer, and the hint of a smirk ghosted across her lips. "All right," he said finally, gesturing toward the range. "Prove it again. This time in front of everyone. My officers, my recruits, let's make it official." A few soldiers nearby overheard and straightened instantly, sensing the tension in the air. Sarah hesitated. "What would that prove, sir?" "You don't need a show." "Maybe not," Hall said, "but they do." He pointed toward the line of recruits gathering for training. "They need to see what's possible. And I need to see if yesterday was a fluke." Her gaze lingered on the horizon. The 2-mile target shimmered faintly in the distance. It wasn't fear that held her still. It was memory. Firing a sniper rifle in front of a crowd was one thing. But every time she looked down a scope, she saw ghosts staring back. Finally, she exhaled. "All right, sir. If it helps your recruits." Hall nodded curtly. "Good. Let's make it interesting this time." By noon, the firing range was alive with anticipation. Dozens of soldiers lined up behind the boundary rope. The heat pressed down, the mirage rising like a living curtain between shooter and target. At the far end stood Sarah, dressed simply in fatigues, her cap pulled low. Beside her, a table held the massive Barrett .50 cal rifle, the same one she'd used the day before. General Hall addressed the crowd. "Listen up. Yesterday, Colonel Reed decided to try her hand at our sniper range. 1 shot, 2 miles. Dead center." He paused, letting the murmurs ripple through the ranks. "Some of you called it luck. Today, we find out." A few chuckles broke out, though quieter this time. Sarah adjusted the rifle, ignoring the stares. The world narrowed around her. For her, this wasn't about proving herself. It was about control, discipline, stillness. She lay prone on the ground, setting the bipod, adjusting the stock, and locking her cheek against the rest. The metal felt familiar, heavy but balanced. Her fingers found their place automatically. The wind carried faint traces of heat, blowing from left to right. She closed her eyes for a moment and felt it against her skin. In her mind, the range faded away. She was back in Kandahar. The rooftop, the distant echo of Nick's voice. "Wind's shifting, Reed. 2 clicks right." "Copy." She opened her eyes. The sight picture sharpened. "Target confirmed?" she asked. "Confirmed," a young spotter replied nervously. "Steel plate, 2 miles." Hall stood behind her, hands clasped behind his back. "Whenever you're ready, Colonel." Sarah didn't respond. She inhaled through her nose, slow and measured. Her heart rate steadied. She adjusted for the wind, elevation, and bullet drop all by instinct. The rifle became an extension of her body. And then she fired. The shot cracked like thunder. The echo rolled across the desert, followed by silence. The soldiers held their breath, eyes fixed on the horizon. 5 seconds. 10. Then clang. The same sharp metallic note rang out again. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Hall's jaw clenched, his pride shrinking another inch. He wanted to believe it was coincidence, but the precision was undeniable. "Still think it's luck, sir?" Sarah asked quietly, clearing the chamber. Hall didn't answer. The crowd erupted cheers, whistles, disbelief. Even the seasoned marksman looked astonished. No one had ever seen two perfect 2-mile shots back to back, especially from someone they'd underestimated. Sarah stood, dusting off her uniform. "Permission to dismiss, sir?" Hall's voice came slower now. "You'll stay." The crowd went silent. He stepped forward, his tone shifting from authority to curiosity. "I've commanded snipers for 30 years, Colonel. I've seen the best of the best. But I've never seen anything like that. I checked your file, half of it's classified." "Who are you?" Sarah's eyes softened, but she didn't flinch. "A soldier, sir. Like the rest of them." "That's not good enough," Hall said quietly. "You don't shoot like the rest of them." Her gaze drifted toward the horizon again. "Some things aren't meant for records." Hall frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning," she said, turning back to him. "Some battles are fought in silence." Before he could respond, she saluted sharply and walked off the range. The crowd parted for her like a tide, their admiration unspoken but palpable. Hall stood there long after she'd gone, staring at the target through his binoculars. The two perfect holes were almost indistinguishable, one directly over the other. He lowered the glasses, shaking his head. "Impossible," he muttered. One of his senior snipers approached hesitantly. "Sir, you think she's former Delta?" "Or, doesn't matter what she was," Hall interrupted. "What matters is what she just showed us." The sniper nodded, still watching the target. "Sir, she didn't even use a spotter." Hall's silence was heavy. "No, she didn't need one." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant mountains, Sarah sat alone at the edge of the range. The desert was quiet again, painted in shades of red and gold. She watched the horizon fade into shadow, her rifle resting across her knees. A voice came from behind her. "You know, you're making it hard for me to keep my pride intact." She smiled faintly. "I warned you, General." Hall stepped beside her, the air between them less formal now. "You did." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind whispering through the sand. Finally, Hall broke the silence. "They're calling you a legend already." "Legends belong to ghosts, sir," she said softly. "I'm still here." He glanced at her, realizing she wasn't speaking in metaphor. There was weight in her tone, a sadness buried beneath composure. "You lost someone out there," he said. It wasn't a question. She nodded once. "A spotter. The best one I ever had. I'm sorry." "So am I," she whispered. The general looked out over the range. "You know," he said, "for years I thought leadership was about barking orders, keeping people in line. But today I learned something new." Sarah tilted her head. "What's that, sir?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes the best leaders don't speak loud. They just aim steady." The sun disappeared, leaving the range bathed in the faint glow of twilight. The general extended a hand. "Thank you, Colonel, for reminding me why we serve." Sarah took his hand firmly, her grip strong but humble. "It's not about who pulls the trigger, sir. It's about why." As they stood there, the desert wind carried the faint echo of distant gunfire, memories of battles fought and won, and of one soldier who could hit the impossible target not because she wanted glory, but because she understood silence. The following morning, the base was unusually quiet. Soldiers spoke in hushed tones, eyes flicking toward the command building where General Hall had summoned an emergency meeting. Overnight, the video of Sarah's 2-mile shot had made its way through every unit chat, every corner of the base network. By dawn, even the Pentagon had seen it. Inside the dim briefing room, General Hall stood at the head of the table. His officers were seated, folders in front of them, but the room buzzed with unspoken questions. Hall cleared his throat. "Gentlemen and ladies, let's keep this short. I received a call this morning from Defense Command. They're interested in Colonel Reed." A low murmur spread through the officers. One leaned forward. "Sir, with respect, interested how? Recruitment? Investigation?" Hall's expression hardened. "They didn't say. Only that her personnel file is sealed under Black Level clearance." That drew a sharp silence. Black Level meant one thing: deep operations, the kind buried so far beneath layers of secrecy that not even generals could access them. Another officer spoke carefully. "Sir, if that's true, then she's not just any colonel." Hall nodded slowly. "No, she's something else entirely." Meanwhile, Sarah was back at the range, but her focus was off. Every shot she took fell slightly short or wide. The rhythm wasn't there, not the steady calm that defined her before. The desert wind carried too many ghosts today. After her third miss, she lowered the rifle, rubbing her temples. A voice interrupted softly from behind. "Mind if I take a seat?" It was Lieutenant Avery Park, one of Hall's younger intelligence officers. Bright, curious, and maybe a little too nosy for her own good. Sarah gestured toward the bench beside her. "Sure. What brings you here, Lieutenant?" Avery hesitated. "Just admiration, huh? That shot yesterday? 2 miles? I've never seen anything like it." Sarah gave a small, polite smile. "Training in time, that's all." But Avery didn't buy it. "I don't think so. I ran your file, or tried to. Most of it's locked down tighter than Fort Knox." Sarah froze, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "You shouldn't be digging there, Lieutenant." Avery swallowed. "I know. But ma'am, if the rumors are true, if you're the one they called Whisper 7, Sarah turned sharply. "Stop." The single word carried so much authority that Avery's breath caught. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then Sarah sighed and looked away. "That name doesn't exist anymore." "So it's true," Avery whispered. Sarah didn't confirm or deny it. She stood, slinging her rifle over her shoulder. "Curiosity gets soldiers killed, Lieutenant. Remember that." And with that, she walked away, leaving Avery staring after her, heart pounding. That evening, General Hall sat alone in his office, staring at his monitor. The Pentagon had sent him a file, encrypted, labeled Top Secret, Whisper Division Operation Talon. He hesitated only a moment before entering his access code. The screen flickered, then displayed a dossier. Subject: Reed Sarah J. Rank, formerly Captain, promoted to Colonel, under classified directive. Special Unit, Whisper Division, Delta Shadow Operations. Role: Long-Range Elimination Specialist. Confirmed missions: 32, 21 successful, 11 classified. Code name: Whisper 7. Hall scrolled further, eyes narrowing as he read the next lines. Status: K.I. Kandahar, Afghanistan, 2016. He froze. Killed in action? But she was alive. Right here. On his base. He clicked into the after-action report. The document described a mission gone wrong, a high-value extraction in Kandahar, heavy ambush, both team members presumed dead. It listed her spotter's name, Staff Sergeant Nick Hawley. The last line hit like a punch to the chest. Recovered items: 1 Barrett M107 sniper rifle, serial number 0937 REED. Hall leaned back, the chair creaking under him. "What the hell are you, Colonel Reed?" he whispered. A knock on the door snapped him out of thought. "Come in," he called. Sarah stepped inside, standing straight, her expression unreadable. "General," she said calmly, You asked to see me. Hall studied her for a moment. Yes, close the door. She did. He gestured to the chair. Sit. She remained standing. He exhaled. Fine. Tell me, Colonel, what's Whisper Division? Her eyes didn't flinch. That's classified. Don't play that game with me. I just read your file. It says you died 9 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. That file isn't wrong. Hall blinked. Meaning? I did die, sir. The version of me that went on that mission, she never came back. She stepped closer, and for the first time, Hall saw something flicker in her eyes. Not fear, but pain. Deep, old pain. You read about Nick Hawley? She asked. I did, Hall said carefully. Your spotter. He was more than that, she said softly. He was my brother. Hall frowned. Brother in arms? No, she said. My real brother. That stopped him cold. We served together under different names, she continued. Command didn't approve siblings in the same covert unit. But they needed us, 2 shooters who thought as one. Her voice broke slightly, then steadied. When the ambush hit, we were pinned on a rooftop. He covered me while I took the shot. I hit the target, but he didn't make it off the roof. Hall leaned forward. And they listed you as KIA? She nodded. I stayed behind long enough to make sure he got out. They thought I was gone. Maybe I should have been. For a moment, even Hall, the hardened, stoic general, had nothing to say. You came back, he said finally. Why? Because I couldn't let his story end there, she said. I needed to keep serving. But they buried everything. The mission, the name, even me. So they gave you a new identity. Sarah nodded. And I took it. No questions. Just orders. Hall sat back, absorbing it all. You realize if the Pentagon finds out you broke cover. They already know, she interrupted quietly. That's why you got that call. Outside, a storm was beginning to gather. Lightning flashed in the distance, painting the desert in brief bursts of white. Sarah stood by the window, her silhouette stark against the rain-streaked glass. They're going to come for me soon, she said. To debrief, or to bury me again. Hall rose slowly. You're not a threat, Reed. You're the best damn soldier I've ever seen. She smiled faintly. That's not what scares them. Then what does? Her gaze remained fixed on the dark horizon. That I'm still alive. The general walked closer, lowering his voice. You could run. Leave before they arrive. Sarah turned to face him. And live as what? A ghost? No, sir. If they're coming, I'll face them. There was quiet strength in her words, the same kind that came before a storm. Hall nodded slowly. Then you won't face them alone. She blinked, surprised. Sir, he held up a hand. You're under my command now. And until I get official orders, no one touches you. Not even Washington. For the first time in years, Sarah felt something she hadn't in a long time, trust. But she also knew it wouldn't last. Because somewhere out there, the people who'd written her off as dead were already watching. And they didn't like their ghosts coming back to life. That night, as thunder rolled across the desert, Sarah sat alone in her quarters, polishing the same Barrett rifle she'd carried through the worst years of her life. Every scratch on the metal told a story of survival, of sacrifice, of silence. She looked at the serial number engraved on the side, 0937 Reed, and traced it with her finger. Then she whispered almost to the wind, I didn't miss Nick. I never missed. Lightning flashed again, and for a brief second, the room was filled with light. Somewhere outside, a black SUV rolled through the base gates, unmarked, unannounced, and authorized by no one on site. They were here, and the storm was just beginning. The black SUV rolled through the base entrance without headlights, the desert wind whispering against its dark glass. 2 guards saluted automatically as it passed, though neither had seen clearance papers. They didn't question it, not when vehicles like that only came from one place, Washington. Inside the command building, General Hall stood by his office window, watching the vehicle's slow approach. He'd been expecting them ever since Sarah's file opened. Still, his stomach tightened as it came to a stop outside his door. A knock followed seconds later, firm, precise. "Come in," Hall said. 2 men entered, dressed in dark suits, wearing no insignia. Their movements were too smooth, too deliberate to be regular intelligence officers. The taller one spoke first. "General Hall, I'm Special Agent Cross, Defense Intelligence Oversight. This is Agent Keller. We're here under direct authority of the Pentagon." Hall didn't invite them to sit. "You're late." Cross smiled faintly. "Traffic." Hall folded his arms. "I assume this is about Colonel Reed." Keller opened a slim black folder. "Correct. Subject Reed, or rather former Captain Sarah Hall, classified under Operation Talon. She's a serving officer," Hall said evenly. "And under my command." "Temporarily," Cross corrected. "Our orders are to transfer her into federal custody for debriefing." Hall's eyes hardened. "Debriefing or containment?" Neither answered. He took a step forward. "She's one of ours. If she's being recalled, I want to know why." Cross sighed, as though tired of the formality. "General, Colonel Reed was declared dead in 2016. The fact that she's standing on your base makes her a national security anomaly. The kind of anomaly that needs to disappear quietly." Hall's jaw clenched. "You mean cover-up?" Keller's tone turned cold. "We mean classified recovery." At that moment, the office door opened. Sarah stepped in, calm, composed, her uniform crisp as ever. She must have known this was coming. "Agents," she greeted, her tone polite but distant. "You could have at least called ahead." Cross smiled. "Colonel Reed, or should I say Captain Hawley?" She didn't blink. "It's Reed now. I buried Hawley with my brother." Keller's voice cut in. "You don't get to decide that. You were property of the Whisper Division. You still are." Hall slammed a hand on the desk. "That's enough." Cross looked mildly amused. "General, let's not make this difficult. We'll take her quietly. No paperwork, no record. By morning, you can pretend she was never here." Sarah met Hall's eyes. There was no fear in hers, only resolve. "It's all right, sir. I knew this was coming." But Hall shook his head. "No, it's not all right." He turned back to the agents. "She's a decorated officer under my command. You want her, you bring me a signed order from the Secretary of Defense." Cross raised an eyebrow. "You really want to play politics, General?" "Because you'll lose." Hall's voice dropped low. "Maybe, but I don't lose soldiers." The air thickened. The agents exchanged glances. Finally, Cross said, "You have until 0600 to comply. If she's not ready for transport, we'll come with a full team." They turned and left without another word. When the door shut, the silence felt like a bomb waiting to go off. Sarah exhaled slowly. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Hall said. "You're not theirs anymore." Her eyes softened. "They'll come back, you know. They always do. Then we'll be ready." She shook her head. "You can't fight ghosts, General." "I've tried." But Hall's tone was firm. "Maybe not. But ghosts don't scare me." Hours passed. Outside, the desert slept beneath a blanket of cold wind and moonlight. Inside, the base stirred with quiet tension. Hall had discreetly ordered a lockdown, no one in or out without clearance. In the armory, Sarah cleaned her rifle in silence. The rhythmic motion calmed her, metal, oil, cloth, breath. But every sound outside made her pause. Every echo might have been the agents returning. Footsteps approached, and Hall appeared in the doorway. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Never could," she said softly. He stepped closer, watching her reassemble the weapon with surgical precision. "You really were a Whisper 7. She nodded once. "The last one left." Hall leaned against the wall. "What was it, exactly? Whisper Division?" Sarah hesitated. "We were Shadows. A unit built for impossible shots. Blacklist eliminations. If something had to vanish, a convoy, a bunker, a name, they sent us. No tags, no records, no graves. Until Kandahar," Hall said quietly. "Until Kandahar," she echoed. "They sent us into a trap. Intel leak. We were outnumbered, pinned. My brother told me to take the shot and run. But I stayed. By the time I made it back, Command had already erased us." Hall's voice dropped. "And now they want to erase you again." She looked up at him. "They can't erase what's already gone." At 0300, a soft alarm flickered across the command board. Perimeter breach. No sirens, no panic, just a single line of text. Unauthorized entry detected. Hangar 3. Hall and Sarah exchanged a look. Both moved instantly. They reached the hangar in under 2 minutes. The night air was cold, cutting through the hum of floodlights. The hangar door had been forced open. Inside, faint footprints marked the dust. Military boots, 3 pairs. Sarah raised her rifle, scanning the shadows. Hall drew his sidearm. From the far end came a voice. "General, you're making a mistake." Cross stepped out, followed by Keller and a third operative holding a case. "I told you 6 a.m., Hall said tightly. "You're early." Cross smirked. "You don't control the clock anymore." Sarah's voice cut through the air. "What's in the case?" Keller opened it just enough to show the contents, a small matte black tablet displaying biometric data. "Her data. Your file," he said. "Everything about you. Every mission. Every name you erased. You want to walk away? Sign your termination here. Digital signature. You vanish for good." Sarah's grip tightened on the rifle. "And if I don't?" Cross's tone turned razor sharp. "Then we make sure you vanish the hard way." Hall stepped in front of her. "You're not taking her." "General," Cross said, almost pitying. "You're obstructing national security." "Maybe," Hall replied. "Or maybe I'm protecting it." Keller drew a weapon. Before anyone could blink, Sarah fired. One shot, clean and precise. The bullet hit the concrete floor an inch from Keller's boot. "Next one's not a warning," she said coldly. Cross froze, eyes narrowing. "You really think you can fight us?" Sarah's tone was steady. "No, I just think you forgot who trained me." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then Cross slowly closed the case. "Fine," he said. "You want to play hero, General? She's yours. But understand this, people like her don't get happy endings." He motioned for Keller to stand down. "We'll be in touch." They walked out, leaving the hangar silent, except for the wind whistling through broken glass. Hall exhaled slowly. "They'll be back." Sarah nodded. "I know, but next time," he said, "we'll be ready." She gave him a faint, tired smile. "You really don't know when to quit, do you, sir?" "Neither do you, Colonel." Later, as dawn crept across the horizon, Sarah stood outside, the desert painted in pale gold again. The night's tension still lingered, but for the first time in years, she felt free, Hall joined her quietly, holding 2 mugs of black coffee. He handed her one. "Rough night," he said. "They usually are," she replied, staring at the sunrise. He followed her gaze. "What will you do if they come again?" "Same thing I've always done," she said softly. "Hit the target before they see me coming." Hall smiled faintly. "I believe it." The two stood in silence as the sun rose higher, 2 soldiers bound not by rank or orders, but by something deeper: loyalty, respect, and the knowledge that sometimes the best shots aren't fired for glory, but for truth. And somewhere, beyond the dunes, an unmarked drone circled silently, its camera fixed on the base, watching, waiting. The shadow war wasn't over. Not yet. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when the base loudspeakers crackled to life. "Attention, all personnel. Code Delta lockdown in effect." "Repeat, Code Delta lockdown." The air around the base shifted instantly. Soldiers running, vehicles roaring to life, gates sealed. In the control tower, red lights flashed like warning eyes. General Hall sprinted across the tarmac toward command, his voice sharp over the radio. "Report. What triggered it?" A technician's shaky voice came through. "Unidentified drone breach, sir. It's military grade, not ours, carrying encrypted signal traffic. It's hovering over Sector 7. Hall's gut tightened. Sector 7, Sarah's quarters. He didn't waste another second. Sarah had already heard it, the faint electric buzz of a drone overhead. She was crouched by her window, watching the tiny silhouette glint against the rising sun. Its pattern wasn't reconnaissance. It was targeting. Her instinct screamed, "They found me." She grabbed her rifle, snapped the magazine in, and rolled to the side just as a high-pitched whine sliced the air. A missile hit the sand 20 meters away, throwing dust and metal through the air. The shock waves slammed into her chest. She hit the floor hard, heart pounding, ears ringing. "Reed!" Hall's voice shouted from her radio. "You all right?" "Still breathing," she gasped, crawling to her knees. "They're not here to arrest me anymore, General. They're here to erase me." "Not on my base," Hall growled. "Stay put. I'm sending a response unit." "Negative," she snapped. "You'll lose men. This isn't a conventional strike. They know how I move. They trained me, remember?" Silence. Then Hall's low voice came through. "Then what's your plan?" She checked her rifle's scope. "Same as always, sir. Hit first." The desert came alive with chaos. The drone swooped low again, scanning the compound, but this time Sarah was ready. She took position behind the wreckage of a Humvee, the long barrel of her Barrett balanced on twisted metal. Her breathing slowed. 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. She watched the drone trace a slow circle, its camera tilting, searching. The sun caught its metal wing, revealing the faint mark of a private defense contractor, Talon Industries. Her stomach dropped. Talon, the name from her brother's last transmission. The same operation that destroyed their team. She steadied her scope and squeezed the trigger. The recoil kicked into her shoulder. A fraction of a second later, the drone burst in a flash of flame and smoke, spiraling into the sand dunes below. The explosion echoed for miles. When Hall reached her, soldiers were already dousing the fire. He pushed through the smoke until he found Sarah kneeling beside the wreckage, studying the debris. He shouted over the noise, "You're lucky that thing didn't hit the fuel depot." "Luck had nothing to do with it," she said, pulling a small metal fragment from the wreck. The edge was scorched, but a serial engraving remained, property of Talon Defense Systems. Hall's face darkened. "Private contractors? That's not possible." "Oh, it's possible," Sarah said grimly. "Talon built Whisper Division. We were their prototype. The government funded the project, but they ran it. When the Kandahar mission failed, they cleaned up their mess by erasing the unit. You mean they killed us, sir? Every one of us. Except me. Hall's hand tightened into a fist. And your brother? Her voice cracked, just slightly. He was captured. I thought he died in the blast. But if Talon's still active... She looked up, her eyes fierce. Then maybe he didn't. By afternoon, the base was crawling with investigators, but Hall kept them out of the command wing. Inside his office, Sarah stood before a large digital map projected across the wall. Data feeds, satellite images, and archived coordinates flickering. This is where it happened, she said, pointing to a cluster of coordinates in Afghanistan. The compound where Nick and I were deployed. When the ambush hit, Command said it was insurgents, but I recognized the weapons. They were U.S. prototypes, same models Talon was testing back then. Hall frowned. So Talon betrayed its own unit. She nodded. They wanted control of the Whisper Tech, the biometric sniper systems we were testing. Real-time data feedback from neural sensors, scope integration with satellite targeting. We were the experiment. Jesus, Hall muttered. Sarah zoomed in on the coordinates. I thought it all burned. But a month ago, someone accessed the old Whisper data vault. Same encrypted key Nick used. That means he's alive. Or someone's using him. Hall studied her face. You think Talon's keeping him? I think they're using him, she said quietly. And if they're sending drones after me, it's because I'm the only one who can expose them. Hours later, Hall stood on the communications deck, arguing into a secure line. I don't care who authorized it. You can't bomb a U.S. base to hide a classified mistake. The voice on the other end was clipped and cold. Stand down, General. You're out of your depth. Colonel Reed's status is terminated. This is above your command. Hall's jaw clenched. Not anymore. He slammed the receiver down and turned to Sarah, who'd been standing quietly behind him. They're cutting me out, he said. Command's pretending the drone strike didn't happen. Then they'll come again, she said softly. Let them, he growled. But we hit first. If Talon's in Nevada airspace, I'll drag them into daylight. Sarah shook her head. You can't. If you expose them, they'll bury everyone me, the base. The only way to end this is to go back to where it started. Hall frowned. Afghanistan? She nodded. The ruins of the Kandahar compound. That's where the truth is buried. The original Whisper data, Nick's last signal, all of it. That's a suicide run. Maybe, she said quietly. But I'm already supposed to be dead. That night, the desert was still. Sarah stood outside the hangar, the stars wide and cold above her. Hall joined her, holding a folder in one hand. What's that? She asked. He handed it to her. Inside were sealed orders. Her deployment reinstatement under special authority. You're not going alone, Hall said. We're going together. She looked up sharply. Sir, you'll lose your command. Then I'll lose it for the right reason. A small smile touched her lips. You don't even know what you're walking into. He met her gaze. You forget who trained half the men chasing you. For the first time in a long time, Sarah laughed softly. A short, almost disbelieving sound. You're crazier than I thought. Probably, he said. But I like long odds. Inside the hangar, a transport chopper waited under dim lights, its blades still. The crew were hand-picked, loyal men who owed Hall more than orders. Sarah slung her rifle over her shoulder and stepped aboard. As the engines roared to life, Hall climbed in beside her. We go dark from here, he said. No comes, no trace. Sarah nodded, strapping in. It's fitting, she murmured. The ghosts returning to where they died. The helicopter lifted into the night, blades slicing through the darkness. The base shrank below them, a fading island of light in a sea of black sand. For a moment, Sarah closed her eyes. In the hum of the engine, she could almost hear her brother's voice again. Calm, focused, steady. Winds shifting, sis. 2 clicks right. She opened her eyes, whispering into the night. I'm coming, Nick. Below, in the shadows of the desert, the wreckage of the drone still smoked faintly. A faint blue light blinked on inside its broken shell. A transmitter, still active, still sending coordinates. A voice crackled through the static. Target confirmed. Operation Phoenix authorized. Recover Hall. Eliminate Reed. A pause. Send the retrieval unit. The ghosts of Kandahar weren't done. And as Sarah's chopper cut through the clouds toward the place she swore she'd never return to, she didn't know that her next shot wouldn't be at an enemy, but at the truth itself. The helicopter sliced through the pre-dawn sky, the faint orange glow of the rising sun spilling over distant mountains. The desert below stretched endlessly, scorched and barren, but to Sarah Reed, it carried memories sharper than any rifle sight. Each dune, each ruined structure was a ghost from the past. General Hall sat across from her, eyes scanning the terrain below. He could sense her tension, the subtle rigidity of her posture, decades of combat distilled into motionless control. You sure about the coordinates? He asked softly. Positive, Sarah replied. Her voice was steady, but her fingers twitched against the rifle stock. Satellite traces, recovered whisper data, and Nick's last transmission line. This is where Talon erased us. This is where he survived. If he survived. Hall exhaled. Then we make sure he comes back too. They touched down near the remnants of the Kandahar compound, long abandoned and bombed out. Walls crumbled into sand, metal beams twisted like frozen screens, and scorch marks streaked the earth. The wind carried the acrid scent of rust and decay. Sarah jumped down first, rifle in hand, scanning the horizon. We're not alone, she murmured. Hall's eyes narrowed. Who else? Everyone, she whispered. Talon never lets ghosts rest. They moved carefully through the rubble, the sound of shifting sand underfoot the only warning of their presence. Satellite images indicated that some structures remained intact, likely underground, bunkers where data servers and sensitive materials were hidden. Sarah led the way, scaling the ruins with effortless precision. She found the entrance to a partially buried hatch. The lock was electronic, but she pressed a small device from her vest against it. Within seconds, it beeped, and the hatch slid open. Hall stepped forward. You know this place better than I do. She paused for a moment, staring down the narrow staircase into darkness. I know it better than I want to. The underground bunker smelled of damp metal and decay. Faded posters on the wall displayed old mission protocols, crosshairs, neural integration charts, schematics for sniper rifles that were decades ahead of their time. Sarah ran her fingers over a dusty table, revealing a partially burned notebook. Hall bent to look at it. This is old classified. How do you know what you're looking for? They trained me on it, she said softly. I memorized everything. This is where Nick and I spent months, preparing for missions that never existed on paper. Talon kept records of all of us. And Nick left a mark, somewhere in this room. A faint hum drew their attention. Across the bunker, a faint green light blinked on a hidden terminal. Sarah's eyes widened. That's him, Hall frowned. Him? I'll show you, she said, moving forward. Her fingers danced across the terminal keyboard, overriding firewalls, decrypting encrypted files. The terminal came alive with video feeds, logs, and a single real-time surveillance feed. A man in a small, locked cell. Hall leaned over her shoulder, peering at the monitor. The figure was familiar. The eyes, the stance. But something was wrong. His hair had grown, his beard thick and unkempt, but the face was unmistakable. "Nick," Sarah whispered. "You're alive." The man on the screen lifted his head and looked directly at the camera. Recognition flared in his eyes, but there was no joy, only hard-edged pain and calculation. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she pressed the intercom button. "Nick, it's me, Sarah. I'm here." "We're coming." A pause. Then his voice, rough and distorted by the cum system. "Sarah, you shouldn't have come back." Her heart sank. "What happened to you? You survived. Why do you sound like that? You don't recognize me, do you?" He said, his tone bitter. "I'm not the same. Talon, they broke me. Wired me to their systems. Turned my mind into their instrument. They call me Whisper One now. Everything I was. Everything we were. Gone." Sarah froze. "You're still my brother, Nick. I don't care what they did to you. Am I?" His voice was almost a whisper, filled with rage. "I've watched friends die, operations erased, names stolen. They erased us, Sarah, and now you're here, walking into their trap." Hall stepped forward, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Sarah, listen to me. We can extract him safely. But we need a plan. This isn't just about recon. They'll have defenses. Drones, automated guns, possibly other operators." She swallowed, jaw tight. "I don't care. I'll get him out, or I'll die trying." "That's what we train to do, sir." Hall nodded. "Then we adapt. You get him. I cover the extraction. But if he resists, you follow my lead." They moved deeper into the bunker, the terminal marking the path. Metal doors slid open to reveal corridors filled with Talon security systems, motion sensors, laser grids, and surveillance cameras. Sarah bypassed each one with precision, long hours of her whisper, training resurfacing effortlessly. Hall followed, covering her from behind. Finally, they reached the cell. Thick glass and reinforced steel separated Sarah from Nick. He turned slowly, his body rigid, wired to multiple systems. Electrodes and sensors ran along his arms and head, feeding Talon real-time biometric data. "Sarah," he said again, softer this time. "You can't take me out." "Not now." "I don't care about Talon," she said firmly. "I care about you. Come back with me." He shook his head. "I'm not your brother anymore. I'm what they made me. You don't understand. They've rewritten my mind. My memories are theirs. I'm a weapon now." Sarah took a deep breath, calming herself. "Nick, I don't need the old you. I just need you alive. Everything else, we fix together. But you have to trust me now." The silence stretched. The hum of the facility, the faint beeping of systems, and their controlled breathing filled the room. Finally, he nodded, slowly. "All right, Sarah, I'll try." Extraction wasn't simple. Sensors triggered alarms as soon as he tried to move. Automated gun turrets emerged from hidden panels, scanning their every step. Sarah moved first, disabling the nearest turret with a precise shot. Hall covered her flank, taking out a second turret with controlled fire. They reached a ventilation shaft that led to the surface. Sarah checked on Nick. His wires had been partially disabled, but he was still fragile, still tethered to the system. "Almost there," she whispered. They crawled through the shaft, the metallic scent of ozone and dust clinging to the air. Outside, the morning sun blinded them momentarily as they emerged near a ridge overlooking the compound. The helicopter hovered below, engines roaring, ready for extraction. "Go!" Hall shouted. Sarah moved first, Nick supported against her shoulder. The soldiers covering the rear fired suppressive shots, clearing the ridge. Talon personnel emerged from bunkers, but the team was faster. They reached the helicopter as bullets whizzed past. Hall grabbed Nick and tossed him aboard, then helped Sarah up. The last moments before the rotor blades lifted were chaotic: gunfire, dust, screams, but Sarah fired 2 more precise shots, clearing the landing zone. They lifted off just as reinforcements arrived, too late to intercept. Once in the air, Sarah collapsed against the seat, relief washing over her. Hall checked the monitors. "They'll regroup," he said grimly. "I know," Sarah whispered. "But Nick's alive. That's what matters." Nick leaned back, exhausted, wires still dangling, but no longer controlling him. His eyes softened as he looked at Sarah. "You came back for me." "I promised," she said. "And I always keep my promises." Hall exhaled. "We're not out of the storm yet. Talon won't forget this. They'll try again." Sarah looked out the window at the desert below, glowing golden in the morning light. "Then we'll be ready. This time, we fight on our terms." The helicopter flew toward safety, carrying not just survivors, but the last living witnesses of Whisper Division. For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself a single thought. The mission was far from over, but maybe, just maybe, the ghosts would finally rest. The helicopter sliced through the early morning sky, carrying Sarah, Nick, and General Hall far from the ruins of Kandahar. The desert below stretched endlessly, a canvas of sand and stone, but in their hearts, a storm still raged. Talon would come, and they needed a plan. Inside the cabin, Nick leaned back, exhaustion etched into his face. The wires that once controlled him were now disconnected, but the after-effects remained. Muscle spasms, tremors, and a mind fogged by years of forced programming. "Sarah," he said quietly, his voice hoarse, "I don't even know who I am anymore." "You're still my brother," she said firmly, gripping his hand. "All the rest is just noise. We'll fix it." Hall, sitting across from them, studied both. "We have a window," he said. "Talon won't give up. They'll send drones, contractors, or worse. We need to move fast and expose them before they cover their tracks again." By mid-morning, they reached a safe house deep in the Nevada desert. Satellite monitors, encrypted servers, and Talon's digital signatures were mapped out across multiple screens. The moment Nick saw them, his instincts as a Whisper operative returned. Despite the trauma, his mind calculated the options quickly: weaknesses, routes, patterns. "This is their network," he muttered, pointing at lines connecting servers across the country. "All roads lead to Phoenix headquarters, Nevada's secret facility. That's where they keep the remaining Whisper tech and files." Sarah nodded. "We go there. We finish this." Hall frowned. "Do you understand what that means? You're walking into a heavily fortified compound. Private contractors, military-grade security, and more automated systems than we've ever faced." "I know," Sarah said calmly. "I've faced worse. And Nick's going with me." Nick swallowed. I'll try. But I won't be the same soldier they used me to be." "You don't have to be," Sarah said softly. "You just need to be my brother again." Night fell. The desert was silent except for the soft hum of the armored convoy that carried them to Phoenix headquarters. The facility was massive. Fortified walls, watchtowers, motion sensors, and drones circling like predators. Every inch was designed to trap intruders. Sarah and Nick disembarked quietly, blending with Hall's team. Using a combination of stealth tactics and her unparalleled knowledge of Whisper tech, Sarah disabled the outer sensors, creating a narrow corridor for infiltration. Inside, the halls were cold and sterile. Servers lined the walls, blinking with data streams. Screens displayed live telemetry from field units, drones, and even biometric readings from test subjects, including Nick. He flinched, staring at his old metrics flashing across the monitors. "They've been monitoring me this whole time," he whispered. "Every heartbeat, every shot I took, every memory." Sarah squeezed his shoulder. "Then let's take it back." The deeper they went, the closer they got to the central control room. Security was relentless. Automated turrets, biometric locks, and armed guards tested their every move. But whisper instincts returned to Nick, calculating angles, timing movements, predicting responses. Sarah coordinated perfectly, each shot precise, each movement deliberate. By the time they reached the core, the remaining Talon operatives realized the intrusion. Alarms blared. Drones swooped down, scanning with lethal precision. Sarah raised her Barrett rifle, the scope trained on the nearest drone. She fired, a clean hit, downing the machine. Nick moved simultaneously, planting EMP devices across the control panels, short-circuiting the system. The lights flickered, monitors died, and alarms stuttered to silence. "Now," Hall commanded, "let's shut them down for good." In the central chamber, a man stepped forward, tall, imposing, the CEO of Talon Industries. His expression was calm, almost amused. "Colonel Reed," he said, "I wondered when you'd return." Sarah leveled her rifle at him. "You killed my team. You enslaved my brother. You erased me from history. Today, it ends." The man smirked. "You're alive. Impressive. But you can't stop progress. Whisper Division is the blueprint for the future. You are merely a test subject." Nick stepped forward, voice cold. "Test subject?" "Yes," the man said smoothly. "You, your brother, and all the others. The United States wanted the tech. Talon supplied it, and mistakes were erased." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Mistakes are people. You made us disappear." "Collateral," he said. "Necessary?" Hall's hand went to his weapon. "Collateral doesn't mean unstoppable." The next 30 minutes were chaos. Sarah fired with the precision that had earned her Whisper 7 notoriety. Nick coordinated movements, taking down guards and disabling automated systems. Hall directed the team, neutralizing reinforcements outside. By the end, the compound was in flames, smoke and fire spilling through corridors as Talon's secrets were destroyed. Critical data servers melted under EMP devices, files incinerated in the blaze. Finally, the CEO tried to escape through a back corridor. Sarah's rifle tracked him. One shot, clean, disabling the man without killing him. He collapsed to the floor, stunned and unarmed. "You're done," Sarah said. He looked up, defeated. "You? Can't stop the system." "You just did," she said. Outside, dawn broke over Nevada. Helicopters arrived to extract the team. Talon's facility was a ruin, the desert winds carrying smoke and ash like a cleansing storm. Nick stood beside Sarah, finally breathing freely, no wires, no control. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes, the same fierce, intelligent eyes, focused on the horizon. "You saved me," he whispered. "You are never lost," Sarah replied. Hall approached, exhaustion clear on his face. "You two make a hell of a team," he said. Nick smiled faintly. "We're not just a team, sir. We're family." Back at the base, the aftermath was intense. Talon was exposed, and investigations by the Department of Defense began immediately. Classified files were recovered, whistleblowers interviewed, and reforms implemented. Sarah's role was recognized officially, though much of her work remained classified, the kind that could never appear on paper. Hall stood with Sarah and Nick during the final debrief. "You survived impossible odds," he said. "And now, you can choose what comes next." Sarah looked at her brother, Then at Hall, I want to live. Really live. With Nick and maybe train the next generation. Teach them that precision isn't just bullets, it's judgment. Nick nodded. And I'm staying by her side. I don't care about Talon or Whisper anymore. I just want you. Hall smiled. Then you've earned it. Both of you. Weeks later, the desert had quieted. Sarah and Nick trained together again, not for missions, but for discipline, skill, and control. Whisper Division's shadows remained in memory only, the ghosts of Kandahar finally at peace. Sarah looked over the horizon one evening, Barrett rifle resting lightly in her hands. You know, she said to Hall, who had joined her, I always thought I'd die out there. Hall chuckled softly. You are always too good to die. I guess, she said, smiling faintly. Sometimes, hitting the target isn't just about the shot. It's about surviving long enough to fire it. And you survived, Hall said. Yes, she whispered. And now, we finally get to live. The desert stretched on endlessly, golden under the setting sun. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Talon's remnants would try again. But for now, the siblings walked into the future together, stronger, wiser, and alive. The ghosts of Whisper Division would never haunt them again. And for the first time in years, Sarah Reed allowed herself to believe in a life beyond the crosshairs.